For some reason, this isn't streaming. Second piece of check a YouTube live stream. Let's go live. Let's go live. That should be streaming, but I can't get it up.
Or we've not got anything.
No, it should just be
Right. Do you want? Can you just go to?
Sorry, what was that, Steve? Sorry, what was that, Steve? Yeah, it is.
Committee starting soon.
It's just not coming up on mine.
Yes, sir. 3 minutes ago.
That'll be about right. Right, well, it is. It sounds like it is coming through live.
Right, he's checking. Can I close some of the other sessions?
Yeah, gosh. So we got about 9 minutes. I can't get it up. Yeah, Robbie's got it on his. Yep, that is correct. But for some reason, I can't get it on my system to show it on YouTube. We've got 5 minutes to go. Good news is I've got the mute button for everybody. Go, and everything should be streaming.
Thank you, David. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's virtual overview and scrutiny committee hosted by Bassetlaw District Council. Given the current challenging situation we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, new legislation has been approved that enables councils to host virtual meetings. rather than requiring members to be present in the committee chamber when making a decision. This keeps everyone safe by maintaining social distancing etiquette and allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. It is very important that councillors can hear each other, so I will invite members in alphabetical order to confirm their attendance and in so doing test their broadband connection. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Councillor Jack Bowker. Hi there, Jack.
Hello, Chair, present.
Thank you. Councillor Robin Carrington-Wild.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Challoner.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Coulthate.
Yeah, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Debbie Merriweather.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor James Naish.
Yep, here, John.
Thank you. Councillor Claire Plevin.
Present, John, sorry.
I know you. Councillor David Presley.
Yes, here, Chairman.
Councillor Madeline Richardson.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Helen Tamblin-Saville.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mark Watson.
Yes, I'm here, Chair, thank you.
Good, thank you. And I'm here, Councillor John Shepherd, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Also in attendance, we will have later Councillor June Evans, a member for Finance. She's not joined us yet. And we've got the following officers, if they can confirm their attendance. So Linda Dorr, who's meeting facilitator.
Present, Chair. And just also to let you know that Councillor June Evans is with us now. Thank you.
That's great. June, are you there?
Of course I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. And we've got James Lavender, Committee Clerk. Are you there, James?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Stephen Brown, Head of Corporate Services.
Present, Chair.
And thank you. And Richard Gadsby, Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Also in attendance, we've got David Hill, Head of Finance and Property.
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you, David. And another David Armiger, Director of Regeneration, Neighbourhoods and Housing, is also webcasting.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. Wearing two hats tonight. And Councillor Steve Wormold, Council Solicitor. Sorry, did I say you were Councillor?
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
And Julie Beresford, Economic Development Manager.
Present, Chair.
Good, thank you. A full house. Brilliant. If members lose connection and the meeting becomes inquorate, if a number of members lose their connection, or the live streaming for the public viewing fails, then I shall adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow the connection to be re-established. Given this is a virtual meeting and there's no corporate responsibility to detail a fire procedure as we ordinarily would, I would like to highlight this committee is live streamed on social media, so all participants, please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from your place of live streaming. And can I remind members to switch off their microphones when not speaking? Okay, agenda item 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies? James.
None received.
Thank you. I think we've got a full attendance tonight. That's brilliant.
Sorry,
Agenda
Chair,
item.
can I just come in and just advise members that Jonathan Brassington, the Policy and Communications Manager, is also present in the meeting.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Agenda item number 2 is to receive declarations of interest by members and officers. I'm not aware of any.
I've received no declarations of interest.
Thank you. If during the meeting a member realises that they have an interest, then please disclose this as soon as possible. Agenda item number 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of June 2020 on pages 5 to 12 of your agenda. Now, we're asked to confirm the accuracy of the minutes. So I'm just going to ask, you've had a chance to look at these beforehand. I'm just going to ask if any member is not in favour of the minutes or has got a correction point of accuracy to raise. Okay, so I'll just pause for a little while.
John, can I just raise something, please? I think on page 7, the third paragraph, it says Councillor Evans asked the committee to note that the council is experiencing different priorities in what are different times. I'm wondering whether that's meant to be difficult times. It was just a small thing as I was reading through.
So difficult to know unless Councillor Evans wants to comment on that.
I think, Chair, the word difficult is the most appropriate.
Thank you for that. Yeah, excellent. Are there any other comments or queries or corrections with regard to the minutes? Okay, the minutes are therefore approved. And agenda item 4 is minutes for action and implementation list, which is on page 13 and 14 of your agenda. Are there any questions from members? These are for us to note. No? Okay, thank you. And agenda item 5 is the outstanding minutes list, which is on page 15 of your agenda. Again, these are for us to note. Are there any questions from members? Thank you. Agenda item 6 is the forward plan on page 17 to 19. Just to remind members that as soon as you receive your agenda papers, you can ask the clerk to contact the relevant officer to provide a briefing note on a particular report on the forward plan and or invite them or the relevant cabinet member to attend the meeting. And also just to remind you that members cannot discuss private and confidential decisions in this section of the meeting. Now, Julie Beresford, Economic Development Manager, is here to give details on the local industrial strategy key decision 817. And I thought members would be interested in hearing about this, so I'm just going to hand over to Julie.
Thank you, Chair. A paper is due to go to the next Cabinet meeting in September to provide an update on the development of the local industrial strategy. Prior to lockdown, we were waiting for the publication of the D2N2 local industrial strategy to ensure that we could then adequately align the priorities for Bassett Law to that of the LEP area. That was published a few weeks prior to lockdown, and we had some further internal discussions on the document. As you can appreciate, since the period of lockdown, the economic development team, our focus has been on supporting with the delivery and administration of the grants in relation to COVID-19, reopening the high streets, responding to increases in needs around unemployment and business support. So there hasn't been a lot of room to progress things over the last 16 weeks, unfortunately. That said, I think at the LEP level, we've been engaging with all of the meetings that's been going on through the economy cell in relation to the changing shape of the local economy, both at Bassett Law level, county level and LEP level. So a lot of intelligence gathering has been going on to help us to just recheck our current situation in relation to the state of the district and the local economy, and how the impact of COVID-19 needs to feature within that. So the D2N2 LEP, although they do not envisage that any of the three principal areas that identified within the LIS as a priority, which were around productivity, which was very skills related, environmental sustainability and inclusion, they don't feel that the longer term priorities will change any, but they feel that they will need to put some additional elements into the LIS to acknowledge the changes and the priorities that have arisen due to COVID-19 and the impact that that's had on the D2N2 area as a whole. So at the moment, we are in a situation where we're revisiting for Bassett Law the state of the district, and we're tracking all of the data that's coming out in relation to employment and business support to put us in a strong position to carry out a similar exercise. So the report that will go in September, we will look to map the areas that we'd already identified as priorities for Bassett Law through the consultation exercises that had already taken place mid and the later parts of last year, to the principles that the D2N2 had identified in the LIS prior to COVID. But in addition to, we will want to acknowledge the general changes in the economy due to COVID, and I think these do need to be obviously incorporated within the Bassett Law local industrial strategies. They will be within the D2N2. We've always planned, and it is still the case, that as well as the strategy, we will have delivery plans attached to the strategy document to look at the short, medium and longer term. And I think in light of COVID and the responses that we still need to be put in place, because we still don't know the complete outcome of the impact that this is going to have on the area, and particularly things like the furlough scheme as more of the government support's withdrawn, where we need to focus our short-term, in particular, attention and support to businesses and our residents. So that is the approach that's going to be talked about in the Cabinet paper for September, about how we approach that. In relation to timelines, the suggestion is going to be that we can obviously get the most up-to-date position on the economic profile for the district in the next couple of months, and then we can draft the strategy, and obviously that could be done by the end of the calendar year, and aiming for adoption of the Bassett Law local industrial strategy by the end of the current financial year, if members agree that timeline's appropriate.
Thank you, Julie. That's a very clear summary, and it's good to hear there's that flexibility in the built into the plan, so you can adapt to the emerging situation. Are there any questions or further comments from members?
Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Presley.
On the furlough scheme, will we have the people who've lost their jobs, even though they've been on furlough, then they'll find out that they've been made redundant, Chairman?
Julie, do you want to?
Yes, Councillor Presley. Yeah. I think in relation to the unemployment stats through the Skills and Employment Board and the partnership meeting, we're keeping a very close eye and working very closely with DWP. We have seen a relatively sharp spike in unemployment in the area. At the moment, it's quite difficult to tell whether quite a lot of those individuals are probably self-employed, and at the moment they've had to sign on to universal credit. So until the furlough scheme does come to an end, we won't know the full outcome of that. But some early indications across the county on the economy cell meeting on Monday is that some businesses have started to issue redundancy consultation notes now, because obviously the 3-month period that will take us up to the end of October for the furlough scheme coming to an end, we're now within that timeline. So I think it's going to be very telling over the next few weeks and the next couple of months as to what the longer term impact is going to be for how many of those are currently furloughed will return to their regular employment. But it's something that we are tracking very closely, and we have got comprehensive data sets on. So if any members want access to those, we can share them.
Thank you, Julie. It's good to hear that.
John, can I speak?
Yes, Councillor Merriweather, Debbie.
I just wondered, have we got anything in place to help these people that may lose their jobs, you know what, with council tax and things like that? Just wondered if we've got a contingency plan for something to help them out.
In relation to council tax, I haven't been dealing directly with that. It doesn't come under, obviously, economic development, but we have made some referrals for those that are self-employed. And I do understand that if they are struggling to meet their bills and commitments at the moment, that they can enter into a payment plan. But again, I can take that away unless any other officers on the call know directly, and get the specific information on that for you if you want me to. I mean, other things that we are helping and signposting people to are the mortgage holidays and just generally contacting utility providers, entering into early discussions if they are struggling. So we're doing our best to keep information out there to residents and businesses on what support and guidance is available to help them with that.
So if we had a resident that obviously come across these difficulties, would we steer them towards the council, to yourself, or who would we steer them towards to help them?
That would be the revenues team that deal with council tax. So I think it will be Elaine Simmons' team that would help in relation to council tax. But as I say, we've made a couple of referrals for individuals that are self-employed and home workers. So my understanding is if anybody is struggling, that obviously they can make an approach and have that early conversation with us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Steve Brown here. Just to add, as Julie was just saying there, through Elaine's team, we have the money advice service that provides an immediate point of contact for anyone who's in financial hardship. And they will provide advice and support to those individuals. Obviously, there are issues through our own benefits work we do, but we also work very closely with the Citizens Advice Bureau, the Three Shires Credit Union, and BCVS and other agencies, and the money advice service is all linked in with that. So we do have that support mechanism there, and I know Elaine is looking at additional capacity that might be required if we do see a sharp increase in unemployment locally. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for that.
Right, Steve Hill, if I could just add something to what Steve said. Yeah, we have had a government grant to help those who are falling into the drop into benefits, and the working age claimants have all received a grant of £150. I know at the moment we've paid something like 600,000 out of the grant, which still leaves us some grant to play with. And what we'll do is as more people fall into that bracket of claiming benefits, we'll we'll be gradually handing that out. Any excess from that will be put into our hardship relief fund, which is there for when people go out to work and then gradually get back into work. We can take their payments, council tax payments, until it's at an affordable level for them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David, for that extra information. That's really helpful. Are there any more comments or questions for Julie?
Sorry, John, can I just quickly go back to Julie on that? So
yeah,
it sounded to me like, in effect, we're looking at an interim paper in September, and as the data matures, that will be coming back late, hopefully start of the next calendar year as the full strategy for implementation. Is that right?
It is. Obviously, we did, the original plan was as soon as the D2N2 paper had been published and we had full sight of the priorities at a level, that we could have developed the strategy. But as I say, it's just been very difficult with capacity over the last 16 weeks, because obviously we've had to turn our attention to responding to COVID and the needs of businesses. So as soon as there's some extra capacity, we'll certainly want to, well, we are currently already tracking the data, and we'll obviously be in a position to start writing that up. So it will be an interim report to update on the position, whether we see any changes in relation to the strategic priorities, which I think will remain unchanged. I think it's more so that we reflect on the impact of COVID, and that needs to feature within the strategy, and particularly in the short and medium term where the delivery plan's concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Well, if there are no further questions for Julie, I'd just like to thank you, Julie, for attending. Thank you for those detailed responses. And as we usually say, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but also you're free to go. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then, David Armijo, who's also the webcaster for the meeting, is Director of Regeneration in Neighbourhoods and Housing. He can respond to any queries we might have on the forward plan, for example, for Bridge Place, Key Decision 821, or any other regeneration housing reports on the forward plan. Are there any questions for David? No, that's fine. Thank you. Are there any other questions on any other item that we've not mentioned already on the forward plan?
Yes, Chair, if I could just raise, we had discussed last time, I think there were 3 issues last time, the floods report, children and young people, and the cycling review, which we'd asked to be put into the forward plan.
Mark, just to Councillor Watson, just to clarify, that was around the work programme for the Scrutiny Committee, and it is in the agenda. It is later on in the work programme, so we will come back to that.
My contribution, Chair.
All right, yeah, and I expect there will be cabinet responses on all those items in the future.
John, can I just ask a question about the ICT strategy to Steve Brown, if possible?
Yes, certainly.
It's just in light of it's kind of what we were just talking about with the local industrial strategy. There's obviously been a significant change in council ICT policy with home working. I just wondered whether that strategy has been updated to reflect that, or again, whether we'll end up with a staggered approach with an interim and then a full ICT strategy to consider.
That's a good question. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it'll come as any great surprise to Councillor Nation and other members that you may recall that we actually engaged Derby City Council to undertake a review for us in a preparation of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats for the council in regards to sort of preparing for the development. Ironically, one of the key recommendations to us was that as a council, we really needed to be embracing agile mobile working and making use of the investment that we'd made in Skype, and also identifying that there was some cynicism about that investment in Skype. Obviously, there's been a huge sea change since then. You will have seen the Chief Executive's recent report about the impact to the organisation. So in keeping with that, I mean, I think there's a full recognition that in moving forward, the council does need to embrace and change its direction and philosophy on mobile working. I think all areas are seeing that review is currently taking place to see where mobile working would be appropriate moving forward, irrespective of COVID. That's taking place, and actually, because there's a recognition that there needs to be a sort of major change programme for the council moving forward, it's possible that we may just delay the ICT strategy coming forward to Cabinet to actually make sure it fully picks up, as Councillor Nash is saying, that it fully reflects where we're going as an organisation post-COVID. Thank you, Chair.
That's good. Thank you, Steve. Yes, it doesn't seem that long ago, the autumn, that we were in a scrutiny task and finish group looking at cycling, and Councillor Nash raised that question about remote working, and generally it wasn't a council policy then, but except in exceptional certain circumstances. But now, of course, it's amazing how the organisation has changed and invested in that in the last few months, really. So it's quite amazing how it's done in a few weeks. So I think, you know, congratulations to everybody involved, and the IT team done exceptionally well.
Excuse Chairman, could I just make one comment, please?
Yeah.
Could I just thank the office for getting back to the questions that's been asked beforehand? I've had some replies, so can I thank the officers for their quick replies, please? And they were very informative. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair.
David, Councillor Presley?
Yeah, the market review's on. I know it's in the confidential. Can we have a report on that? David Armitage is here. You can give us that later in the agenda. In the markets.
I can probably actually report back on that now, Chair, if that's helpful.
I think that would be helpful, yes.
Okay.
Without covering any confidential aspects.
Absolutely. The key reason why the service review is on there is really to make sure that following the review that we had, that we've aligned the staffing structures with the requirements going forward of the market. I think one of the difficulties was obviously it was going to be brought forward prior to COVID, and we've been delayed. But actually, that's probably been a benefit, because the markets team have actually gone about reviewing the way the markets have been done, and it's given us some additional insights into how we actually need to structure that team. We do also have some benefit as well, that we are now working with Harworth to make some provision in Harworth. So again, there's some changes that have come about since we started that process. So the review will be looking at the staffing structure. That aspect of it will be confidential initially because it deals with staff and jobs. But the intention is that it's there to deliver the basis of the report that came forward a few months ago in terms of what our intentions are with the markets, which is a core part of the town centres, Worksop, Retford, and also now Harworth.
Thank you, David. Okay. If there are no more questions on the forward plan, I shall move on to item 7, key decisions of Cabinet of 7th of July 2020, which is on page 21 of the agenda, going on to page 30. Okay, on page 21, we've got selective licensing, outcome of consultation, key decision 694. I'll just read out the resolution, because members have had a chance to read this already, but it is resolved that members reject the existing selective licensing proposal in favour of the investigation into and development of a draft thriving neighbourhood strategy, initially for the areas of Worksop South East, Worksop Central and Worksop Sandy Lane. 2, that a further report outlining the draft thriving neighbourhood strategy for the areas of Worksop South East, Worksop Central and Worksop Sandy Lane be brought to members at a future date. Okay, has anyone got any questions on this before David Armiger can answer?
Can I ask a couple of questions, John, if that's okay?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Nation. Yeah.
My first thing was obviously, I think that there's a general acknowledgement in the paper that the number of participants was lower than we had hoped at 21 completed surveys. I was looking through it, and I think there were well over 40 different questions. And I guess it was more of a question maybe for Jonathan or the communications team, just about whether there's anything that we've particularly picked up through this process and what we've learned about trying to get higher responses, because obviously there is a risk here that we're taking a decision to change tack, but that has undoubtedly been influenced by sort of the paucity of the response. So I was just wondering, firstly, whether there's anything that we've specifically learned from this round of consultations, which obviously hasn't gone as well as we'd hoped.
Could I comment, Chair, as well, that I looked through all of the responses to the consultation, and there were a lot of questions that weren't answered by anybody at all who took the survey. And certainly wading through it, I think if I'd been faced with a consultation questionnaire like that, I may well have balked at completing the whole thing. So I think, as James says, we perhaps need to learn something about communication strategy from that.
Okay, I'll give David Armiger a chance to respond to that.
Okay, yeah, I think that there's a couple of issues there. I accept sometimes the issues do put people off, but there are things that we do need to pick up in the questions, because it does need to be a robust understanding of people's perceptions of the range of issues, and that's never easy. But it is something, I think, if those individuals with a strong interest will pick up on what they do. But it's the biggest issue was the fact that there didn't seem to be a great deal of engagement, even though we do know there are a number of people out there with strong interest in what was being proposed. So it is a difficult situation to balance. That if we'd missed something off as being one of the key strategic asks, we could have been criticised for that. But it's finding that way of setting it out, and yeah, that's something we do need to learn going forward. I think one thing I would want to emphasise with this, though, is what we're not doing is dropping the idea out of hand and saying we're not going to progress with just taking some action in terms of addressing housing quality. This is a way of actually building up information and engaging people as we go forward. If at the the end of this process, further action and further enforcement processes are necessary, we will be doing that. So this is a start of a different process, but it is not a closing off.
Thank you, David. Just for the newer members of Scrutiny, just point out, we did look at this. We reviewed housing, particularly housing quality in the private sector. I think it was a couple of years ago, and we were recommending to look at this, exploring this selective licensing. Having read the report, I can see the arguments here for the recommendations, the strategy outlined. So things have moved on a bit. We've had the consultation. That seems to be the way forward.
Chairman.
Chair,
can I come in there? Sorry.
Okay.
Me or David.
Yeah.
First.
David,
yeah,
indicate first. Or Councillor Coulter then, and I'll come back.
It's all right. Thank you, David. I'll be honest. I'm a bit disappointed without questioning the content of the report. I've actually, as we discussed last time, I've pointed out before, I've been part of the selective licensing scheme, and I've seen the successes that it does generate. We found exactly the same in regard to initial landlords even wanting to engage with us in the process, because, to be blunt, many of them didn't want to acknowledge the council, didn't want to acknowledge the police, etc. Because then once we've got the contact details, they know we're going to contact them, if that makes sense, if we start to build up that relationship. A major sell to us was looking at other scheme areas where they were able to see an increase. And when we mean rental income, what we did, we weeded out the bad tenants. So if they were charging £400 a month, they got £4,800 a year, rather than 3,200, and they were chasing the other £1,600, which you often do find for some landlords. I just fear, and you know, without listening to Cass Spurgeon, I just want to take this on board. When I've read about the plan for the future, I'm not seeing much teeth there. The great advantage of selective licensing was it gave us a statutory instrument that landlords had to deal with us, and they had to have them properties in a good standard for their tenants. And if they didn't, there was no mucking around. The tenants ran the council, even occasionally they ran the police and says, what do we do? We ain't doing X, Y, Z, and we were able to signpost them. And that meant a lot of unscrupulous landlords left the area and left it to those landlords willing to engage. And when I read about things such as to achieve such measures as the strategic housing team would form, etc., with all these other organisations in, I maybe just smell a committee there made up of, for example, you put fire service to police, of a neighbourhood policing team officer or a fire service member with 15 or 20 other jobs to do that day, coming to a meeting once every quarter. And I really want to make sure you've got, at the end of this, we have teeth to hit landlords who aren't looking after the tenants, because we might throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, thank you for that. David, do you want to respond to that?
I think one of the driving forces there was our concern is that if we weren't careful, we would actually end up not having anything in place, because we had a concern about the sort of the possibility of a judicial review and challenges to this. So that the intention is not to close up shop, not do anything. It's to keep making steps forward, and this should get us to a process where we've got a lot more information we can use as the basis for a formal process, and that may very well end up with selective licensing at the end of that process. But so the real intention is very much, as was said, is to have a robust process that is actually going to stand up. Our concern was we were potentially not going to be able to get there, and that's making sure we keep on that sort of track. But yeah, everybody in the team wants to see a very robust engagement with landlords and improvement in the quality of housing, particularly in the areas identified. It is a known problem, and it is something we'll continue to work on.
Thank you, David. I'm pleased to hear. Can I just say, Maddie, I'm pleased to hear you're not rejecting it out of hand totally, and moving towards bringing in a draft strategy that will come back to cabinet, and it will come back to overview. So members will get another chance to look at that. Sorry, Maddie. David was waiting to come in. I'll go over to David now. Councillor Presley.
Okay, sorry, John.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at the thing, and part of it is in my ward, like it is in yours, Chairman. And we know what the problems are up there, especially on Sandy Lane, where there's different landlords who don't live in the area. That's the difficulty about getting a consultation, because they don't live here. They own the houses. They might be in London, they might be in Scotland, they might be in Ireland. We don't, they're not here. So somewhere forward with this is better than nothing. And I think we can change it as we go along. But let's look at it from the neighbourhood strategy, because we've got a new guy in neighbourhoods now, a new head of service. So I think we can look at this way. It comes back to scrutiny, as you said, Chairman. So we'll have another look at it. If we're not happy, we'll look at it.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Presley. Councillor Richardson, Maddie.
Yes, I just wanted to know, with this draft thriving neighbourhood strategy that's coming forward, what the timeline will be, because we don't want to let go of the selective licensing as in one form. And I understand what David's saying about judicial reviews and things like that with the other one, but I'm just as a future date, and I'm just a little bit, what's the timeline and when do we think this would come forward with the new neighbour officer we have?
All right, this is where I put my hand up and say, in this instance, I must admit I will have to seek advice on that and advise you, because I'm not quite certain what the timeline is on that. I know Alison has thought it to set that out, but I can't myself remember the timeline. But we can get that information back for you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, would I say something, please?
Yes, certainly, Robin. Councillor Carrington-Wilde.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's great that we can try and develop a thriving neighbourhood strategy. My concern is, and it's probably similar to Anthony's, is that if somebody fails really to either engage or to meet standards that we're looking for in the strategy, would that lead to enforcement, or should we start from the basis that we'll be looking to enforce? For me, that's where the split is. The strategy will be fine if there is iron in the glove at the end of it, if people aren't doing it, or do we start from the preface that there are landlords that aren't doing the duty, there is people living in substandard housing, and do we start from there or do we start from the strategy? So I'm a little bit either way really with it, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, I think where we have the powers, we will enforce. One of the issues is we are dependent on tenants raising concerns with us. That's probably the biggest factor, really, that's holding things back. But certainly the teams that are involved in this will use the legislative powers that we have to make sure we maintain quality. Now, that's where we currently are. Do we need any more, and do we need to put further things in place? We'll come out of this process, and if we feel that isn't an option, I'm sure members are going to have fairly strong views about that, or it is an option, that we do need to be taking more stronger steps to addressing this. But there's certainly no intention at this stage to sort of sit back and wait for things to sort themselves out, that we will continue to exercise the powers that we have.
Thank you.
Just two things from me, if it's not a problem. I think firstly, David, just coming back on my original point, I guess my thoughts were, to what extent did we consider external, actually trying to recruit to bolster these numbers? I don't know whether we used an external agency to do that. And I think sometimes in these difficult activities, there's a huge amount of effort that's gone in, but perhaps, to Councillor Presley's point, if we knew a lot of people were outside of the area, potentially that's where, although it costs money, looking at external agencies to recruit to get response numbers up could be something that we consider in future. And the second thing is just, I have worked for one of the authorities referenced who is already using the Thriving Neighbourhood strategy, and I would just highlight a bit of a concern about saying that the strategy is a low-cost option, because where I used to work, yes, it was a low-cost option, but consequently, to Robin's point and to Ant's point, there wasn't that much activity, and that there didn't seem to be the sort of teeth. I think it started extremely well as a pilot, but when it was expanded outwards, it kind of lost its way a little bit. So I think the strategy itself might be a low-cost option, but actually making a strategy like this work could ultimately be more expensive, and I guess we just need to be prepared for that, that it may come back and actually this is just one component of it, and there might be 3 or 4 others, and the cost of that may ultimately need to be higher. So the strategy itself, yes, low cost. Implementation, I would doubt it if we want to see it be successful.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Neistat. So that was more of a comment.
Chair, could I just say something, please, Councillor Challoner?
Yeah, certainly, David.
Right. Obviously, over the years, this council, Bassetlaw District Council, has bent over backwards to work with private landlords with different services, offering them grants to do properties up, helping if they haven't got the right people in place, that we could go out and do the work for them, trying to work in partnership with them. We've had consultation, we've had certain meetings. I think one of the meetings was, I don't know if it were Retford Town Hall or upstairs at Workshop in the Assembly Room. And when we as a council had gone out and basically said, we want to work with you, and part of it was becoming part of this licensing side. And I think we had a take up of about, if you could say there were 30 or 40 in room, I think we had 3. I don't know if you can remember this, David, when we did all this. We have bent over backwards over the years to work with private landlords, and all they seem to do, it's like having sand kicked in your face. And in some respects, we are finding out that people are now having the confidence to come to us as a council if they have got problems in privately rented accommodation, that the council will be there to support them, help them if things are unsafe, and we will enforce. So we have bent over backwards to help people, and because everybody has the right to live in a decent home. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Councillor Chandler. Are there any other comments or questions? Well, I'm going to ask now if anyone is against endorsing this key decision or wishes to abstain.
Yes, Chair, I wish to abstain, please. And Cultate,
Okay.
sorry.
Councillor Cultate is abstaining. Okay, thank you. The key decision is endorsed. Moving on to the next one, the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2020/21 onwards, key decision 772, and this is at the bottom of page 24. Resolved that, number one, the current financial position of the Housing Revenue Account be noted. The current assumptions made within the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2020/21 onwards at paragraph 3.9 be noted. Number three, the potential changes to investment, brackets paragraph 317.3 to 3.17.6, arising from the development of the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan and the emerging areas of work to reshape the financial strategy and agree to support further work, paragraph 3.17.7, being undertaken on the strategy ahead of further cabinet decisions in January 2021. And number four, the head of housing and the head of finance and property monitor the housing revenue account, and that further reports are brought to members on an annual basis or as a result of changes in national policy. Number five, the head of housing prepares a housing revenue account business plan that outlines the priorities and objectives for the housing service over the medium term of this model, and that a further report be brought to members. And number six, thanks be recorded to the head of housing, head of finance and property, and officers for their work in producing the business plan 2020/21 onwards, and the report presented. Okay, so does anyone have any questions David Hill or David Armiger can answer? Okay, I'm just going to ask again, like I did with the previous one, is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishes to abstain? Oh, okay, thank you. That key decision is endorsed. And the next one is the Local Government Association peer review update. Key decision number 819, page 26 now. Resolve that, one, the report be adopted and the results of the February 2020 Local Government Association peer review be published. And number two, progress updates be provided in the quarterly performance management reports to Cabinet. Again, does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm just going to ask now, is anyone against endorsing this decision?
Sorry, John, I was just on mute. It was just a quick comment to make, if I can. It was just to highlight in the report on page 2, which is actually page 165 in the cabinet document. It's just this phrase, which I picked up before, and I think it's even more important now. It just says, going forward, it will be very important that BDC is clear on what its priorities are and how it will secure their delivery. And I just think it's worth highlighting that, because especially in the current situation, you know, a number of those priorities that were agreed at the start of this 4-year administration are likely now not to be deliverable, just because of the economic position, the impact that COVID has had on us as a council. And so I do think we should be, as a council, seeking to confirm what those priorities among the priorities are. And the sooner we do that, the better, really, because obviously there are some priorities which realistically we now are just not going to manage to deliver, or will be delivering a very pale imitation of it. So while I think the peer review report was excellent in terms of what it was saying and how the council's perceived to be performing, I thought that was relevant anyway, and I think it's even more relevant as a comment now. So it was just something that I thought I'd call out, because I think that's something we should be reflecting on.
Thank you for that comment. I don't know if David Armiger wants to.
I think simply to say, yes, that is very much recognised. Things have moved on very considerably, and there are new priorities that have come our way. There are new things that we need to do, and there's some things we've learned that will actually give us a basis for doing things differently, which hopefully will improve the quality of service delivery as well, which gives us a reason to go back and review things. So yeah, absolutely, that has been recognised.
Thank you for that, David. Okay, so I'll just ask again, is anybody against endorsing this decision, or anyone wanting to abstain? No, thank you. The key decision is endorsed. And the next one is the COVID-19 recovery, key decision 827 on page 27 of our papers. Resolved that 1, the work done to date in relation to COVID-19 recovery planning be noted, that updates on individual actions will be discussed with portfolio holders and brought back to Cabinet as appropriate. And 2, thanks be recorded to all officers who have been involved in responding to the COVID-19 crisis and their hard work in the recovery preparations. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? I think I'd just like to comment that we certainly can endorse that. Thanks to the officers in the way they've responded to the COVID-19 crisis and their hard work that has done so much for our community. Okay, if there aren't any questions, is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? Okay, the key decision is endorsed. And the next key decision that was at Cabinet is the quality objectives 2020 to 2024, key decision 831. And this is at the top of page 28 in our papers. And just as a reminder, members, we should be looking at all the Cabinet papers, you know, so that we are fully up to speed with these key decisions when they come through to us. Okay, so the equality objectives. It's resolved that the equality objectives for 2020 to 2024, as set out within the report, be approved, and the Cabinet receives an annual report updating on progress. Okay, has anyone got any questions or comments? Steve Brown would be able to answer.
Just a comment, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Councillor Presley.
On the second paragraph, I noted that we are the first 4th best in the country for meeting public sector accessibility requirements following work undertaken by 2 officers. Can we recommend that and thank them 2 officers, Chairman, for the work?
Thank you for that. Yeah, certainly. I'm sure we'll all echo that. And the 4th best in the country. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, David.
The only other thing, John, I was going to highlight was, you know, the paper that went to Cabinet was pretty relevant. There were plenty of references in there to what's happened in America with the Black Lives Matter campaign and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, it was good to see and good to read that we're thinking about all components, even in somewhere like Bassetlaw, where I guess race is probably not perceived to be a particularly significant matter by some people because it's predominantly white population, but it's good to see that that's in here as well.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Yes, I agree. So it's certainly a very important part of the council's work here in terms of quality objectives. Are there any other comments or questions on this key decision? No, I'm now going to ask then if is there anyone against endorsing this key decision or wishing to abstain? No, thank you. This key decision of Cabinet is endorsed. Local plan update is the next one. This was key decision 543 on page 28. Resolve that, number 1, the current progress on the development of the local plan and the community infrastructure levy charging schedule be noted. And number 2, thanks be recorded to officers who arranged and attended a comprehensive range of events and worked hard to engage with residents, businesses and organisations as part of the consultation process. Okay, so does anyone have any questions or comments on this Cabinet key decision?
I have a question, please, Chair.
Thank you, Maddie. Councillor Richardson.
It just says that officers will be able to carry on with this when the restrictions are lifted, but do we know any time when this will resume? All the work was carried out and all the consultations were finished. And then with that, just a comment, Chair, it recorded to officers who arranged all the plans. They went out of their way to make sure that everyone knew about it, and all they attended so many events. It was unbelievable. I was at a few of them, and you see the same faces and get to know them. So I just want to say, record that, you know, it was really hard practice for them to be out in their own time, most of it. So it's a real good thanks to them for doing that. But I'm just interested in when they can resume to get this going, because it's quite an important plan to get going, and it's taken a long time, and it is a long consultation and, you know, an adaptation period for them. So that was just my question. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. I'll pass that over to David Almager.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is knowing when we can undertake some of the key aspects of this. So site visits are probably relatively straightforward if they're unaccompanied, but holding public meetings as part of any consultation exercise becomes a little bit more difficult. and this has clearly got, it's not something you suddenly add water to it and it becomes a fully formed plan. We would need to go back to Cabinet with the initial proposals and to get approval for consultation. So we can probably start doing some work on it. But if that process in itself takes several months to go through, who knows where we will be in a few months. And it's quite likely that even if we sort of get the indication that we're able to start undertaking certain consultations, the situation could change. So it will be fluid. We're not going to sort of sit back and wait an inordinate length of time, but we do have to be very mindful that we might need to be very careful about how we undertake some of the actions and possibly adapt the strategy as we go forward to take account of how we can consult and how we can actually engage. And one of the great unknowns is if we do get to a public inquiry, how on earth that would be handled is another interesting one, which let's hope we don't need to get to that and it's a normal process that follows the standard rules. But there's lots of imponderables and most of it are not in our hands.
Thank
if
you,
I
David.
could just make a comment, Chair, as well, just to agree with Councillor Richardson that there is a lot of pressure from our residents to know what's happening with the plan, and obviously it's a much more difficult thing to push forward at the moment, but there is a huge hunger for further information on where we're going with it as soon as we can make progress.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Right. Okay. If there are no more questions for David, I'll just ask if anyone is against endorsing this decision of Cabinet or wishes to abstain. No, that's key decision is endorsed. Thank you. And the next key decision of Cabinet was the Heritage at Risk Strategy, key decision 770, page 29. Resolve that option 2 to publish the 2020 Heritage at Risk Strategy and updated register as set out in paragraph 5.2 of the report be approved.
Chair, if I could just ask, in the bottom paragraph on page 29 there, it says that a full survey of listed buildings and scheduled monuments has commenced, and information of those already surveyed is now available to view on the council website. I had a look on the website yesterday and I was able to download the full report from 2012, but I can't see any information on any properties that have been reviewed more recently than that on the website.
Hello, I don't know if this is one for David.
I think it is, Chair. I think we can have a look at that, but if any member has got any direct questions they have, it's probably best if they contact the conservation team. So Mike Tagg, the conservation team, will be more than happy to take any questions. And you probably also get more direct feedback then about the specifics of individual properties than you would from the website. So we'll have a look at that and it should be available, but failing that, please by all means contact the conservation team and they can assist you with specific issues.
Thank you, David.
Chair, I did that, and Michael will give you a full list if you require it.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Yes, I'll endorse that. Agree with that. Mike Tagg is very, very helpful if you've got any queries about specific buildings. And as it says here, it's very important that the strategy and the register are up to date. As you know, some buildings that were at risk have been success stories, have been renovated and saved, but all the time, of course, there are others that are deteriorating. So thank you for that. Again, I need to just ask if there's anybody else got any questions. And is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? No, thank you. That key decision is endorsed. And the last of the key decisions now, the CCTV Code of Practice, key decision 823 on page 30. Resolved that the updated code of practice for the operation of the Bassett Law CCTV system be approved. So does anyone have any questions on this?
Just a comment, Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Presley.
It was going to the code of practice, Chairman. It came in 20 years ago, and I was on the cabinet, and you were, Chairman, when we introduced CCTV to Retford and Worksop. So for 20 years ago, we're looking at CCTV in Bassett Law, which has been a great success, a great tool to the police, and I think it's a great thing that we are now giving it out to other people and they're endorsing it, and it really is a success for Bassett Law, Chairman.
Thank you for that comment. I'd certainly agree with that. It has been a success, and when you think of that 20 years, how this kind of system has developed. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Could I just add something, Chair?
Certainly, David.
Yeah, I very rarely want to suggest that Dave hasn't said anything quite correctly, but we're not giving it out; we're actually selling it out. So it is actually covering its own costs for most areas. So from our commercial perspective as well, it is actually something which is starting to cover the not inconsiderable investment that we put into it.
Mm. Thank you for that.
I think that's great, Chairman, that now we're making some money from it as well.
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay, like before, I'm just going to ask, is anybody against endorsing this decision or wishes to abstain? No, thank you. The key decision is endorsed. And thank you, David, for answering those questions. I know you're going to stay there because you're webcasting. Next, we have item 8A, waiver call-in decision taken without sufficient notice. I agreed a waiver publicity so that the report entitled COVID-19 Recovery, key decision 827, could be discussed at the Cabinet on the 7th of July. Okay, so moving on, agenda item 9, we have the call-in of the member delegated decision number 7, 2020/21, charging for the use of toilets at 73 Bridge Street, pages 31 to 35. Everyone has had a chance to read the delegated decision. So have members got any comments or questions for Councillor June Evans as the Cabinet Member and Decision Maker, or for David Hill, Head of Property and Finance?
So I think, John, I'll just ask a couple of things. I think there was, as someone who was away when this was originally discussed, that there are a few things that actually I think have already been addressed which weren't actually referenced in this paper, which would be good to just clarify, because I think that will put people's concerns at ease. And the first thing was around the cashless option. Obviously, with a lot of people nowadays not carrying cash, I'm an example of that. I think that there is provision for this, although certainly when I read this initially, that wasn't in there. But it would be good just to get clarity and get that confirmed that that cashless option is going to be available.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Councillor Evans or David Hill, do you want to comment?
Yes, I can comment, Chair, on that.
Thank you.
I confirm that there is a cashless option, and it's all set up and ready to go.
That's really good. I must say, at the moment that so many people are not using cash, and with the health, concerns, that's very encouraging. James, Councillor Nash, did you have another question?
Yes, so that was the first thing, and then I think the second thing, which was just around how this fits into the broader policy, because obviously what we're potentially looking at here is where we might be charging for a public toilets in workshop, but I don't think at the moment there's a plan to charge anywhere else. And I think one of the things that I was keen to understand is to what extent this fits into a broader strategy or plan around public toilets, and whether ultimately we do or don't want to charge for that. So yeah, I think whether there's an update on that, it might be useful to think about if there is a specific strategy on this, and whether where we want to ultimately end up. So as soon as I read this DD cold, it felt like a response to a specific issue that we've got in one place, but I was just keen to understand what that means in the broader context of providing public toilets in our town centres.
Again, I'll pass this over to David Hill or Councillor Evans.
I'll reply if you like.
Thank you.
Right. First and foremost, there have been no discussions on charging for other Bassetlaw District Council owned toilets. Members are aware that these toilets have been subject of concern to the police, to local business and the public because of ongoing antisocial behaviour, and there has also been one drug-related death so far in these toilets. It was these concerns that led to the decision to establish a security presence and therefore a charge for access. So no, there is no policy, no strategy to spread this right across Bassetlaw District Council.
Chairman.
Can I speak as well, John,
Chairman.
please?
Yeah, just a second. Yes, well, thank you, June, for that very clear and clear response. Two people were speaking there. Councillor Merriweather first.
Thank you. One of the other things that was discussed was the fact also that the reason why Retford at the moment does not charge is because we do have a volunteer that stands there and cleans the toilets and looks after the toilet. He does volunteer. Now, come a time when he's not there to volunteer, the chances are that a payment will be put on there so that the facilities are looked after and cleaned. But at the moment, we have somebody there that already volunteers, so there was no need to charge the public.
Okay, thanks for that comment. Does anybody want to respond to?
Chairman.
Is that David?
Yeah, we had 3 toilets in workshop at one time. We've had to close two of them because of drug dealing and vandalism. One on Gateford car park and one in the town centre. We've only got one left in workshop that is open, and that was the one on 73 Bridge Street. Sorry, Chairman, but the vandalism has been horrendous on there, and I know that because I've been involved when we first had the toilets on there. So the charge is this: to put somebody on the toilets to look after them. We need it in workshop. They've got to be there in workshop, as it's going to lose the toilets again. So this small charge, which is nothing really, and it is cashless as well, you can use. Around the country, toilets are charged for now, wherever way you go. You go on holiday, you'll have to pay. So we're looking after the toilet in workshop, which we spend a lot of money on in the last 10 years, not just now, to look after it. And this time is a chance to give workshop people the toilets they deserve, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Well said. I agree with everything what you just said. Yeah, I think most people's priority will be for a clean and safe toilet, and my opinion is 20p doesn't seem unreasonable to pay for that. And it seems to be addressing a specific problems that you've just clearly explained, and Councillor Evans explained. Are there any further questions or comments from members?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair. Oh, there's a few of us.
Yeah, go on, Ellen.
Okay, Councillor Tamblyn-Saville.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Evans, for coming on as well to answer our questions. I take the point about vandalism, and I'm guessing this wasn't an easy decision at all for people. One of the concerns I had, though, is that up to 43% of people have conditions where they require the frequent use of a toilet. You've got, parents with their kids. I've got a 6-year-old. When she wants to go to the toilet, you're dashing about. They don't control their bladders very well. People who are pregnant, people who require access to a toilet, but not necessarily a disabled facility. So for that reason, I appreciate 20p isn't a huge amount of money, but if you are somebody who needs that frequent use of the toilet, you can plan your trip around going into town, needing to go, etc. And sometimes worrying about the payment can start adding up. If you're somebody for whom you need to go quite frequently, and actually maybe 20p isn't something that you can afford to park because you need to go quite often, it's a discretion where the guards will let you in. So if that makes sense.
I'll answer.
Yes, Councillor Evans.
Right. Regarding health conditions resulting in the need to go to the toilet often, I don't understand this figure of 43%. It's not a specific statement, and it is, I believe, incorrect. I've researched this. The true facts are that between 5 and 10% of the population are affected. It affects twice as many women as men. Causes are, as you've listed, are correct. And whereas causes in men is usually related to prostate glands, and both sexes are affected by aging. Yes. If there was an issue whereby a very distressed lady or man wished to go to the toilets, I'm sure, yes, and they haven't got the 20p, the security guard is more than able to ascertain that this is a genuine situation, and of course they will be allowed access.
Good, that's good to hear. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Can I just speak, please, John?
Okay.
Sorry, have you got someone else?
Councillor Richardson and then Councillor Presley.
Yes, I've been on the COVID team working in this town centre, on the market days, and that's very, very busy, especially on a Wednesday. And I've known the security guards let the older generation, and even with children, they've put them over, and they've been fine. They're very flexible when it comes to things like that, and they have been. As far as, people paying, they're happy to have the toilets clean. They're absolutely enjoy that there's somebody there watching over. Yes. The toilets are looking good, and the market traders especially, they've got the toilet back. They can go there when someone else looks after their stall. I've not heard one thing about it. Nobody's complained about paying any money whatsoever, and they're absolutely fine. They can come into work shopping now, and they've got a facility they can use. They've all these cafes open. They all go for coffees, and the first thing you do when you've done is go to the toilet, and nobody's complained. And there's never a queue, many outside, 2 or 3 maybe outside. So it's a good facility, and I'm all in favour of it being paid 20p because I've seen it being used, and it's amazing. So the guards are on duty. They're very compassionate, not worried about anything, and they're doing the job.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Councillor Presley, I think you wanted to say something.
Chairman, they've still got the other toilets on the bus station, which are there, if you want to use them. So they're free. And you've got the changing places toilets, which are free. So I don't see any problem. And I've had prostate problem. And when it comes to the toilet, I have to go. But you have to go, Chairman. And I'm one of those. And I'll admit that. When it's toilets there, I've got to go. But you do, it's something that we need done for workshop. It's been missing a good toilet, and now we've got one. We've got another one in the bus station, which people probably don't know about, but it's there. And there was also one in the library you could use, but the library's closed at the moment. But it will be open again next year, and therefore you're going to have another toilet facility there. And we're also putting toilets on the cans. We've got planning permission for that now. We've got the money for it, so there's going to be another one. So you'll have 4 toilets in workshop soon. 3 will be free, 1 will be 20p. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, that is good news, isn't it?
Chair,
Can I speak, John, please?
Councillor Coulter, I think first, and then Councillor Plevin. Is that right? I can't see everybody when I can hear the voices.
Okay, Councillor. Yeah, I just want to just add 2 points. One of my main concerns that's been addressed when I asked for it called in was that I wasn't confident it was explicitly stated security were based at that location. Because I've had lots of experience of paid toilets actually suffering more vandalism, of people forcing gates, forcing barriers, where there isn't somebody there to watch the barrier. So that was one of my main concerns, that if you like, we're going to get a different type of crime. And then all you get is people banging open the barriers, causing £1,000 worth of damage, and then still committing criminal damage in the toilets. And I just want to add one other thing, and you know, people can think what they may. To become a councillor is quite an intimidating process. And, you know, I don't know Helen outside, but Helen's done the right thing calling this in, because when she brought it to my attention, things I didn't understand, and we've used a tool here to get the answers we would like as councillors. And I just think for somebody with just 12 months service on the council, that's why the tool's there. And I just think that's a positive thing. And as what's happened is, I'm a bit more reassured now than where I were. And surely that's a good thing.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Coulter. I would just say that what we've been doing earlier tonight is a certain amount of pre-scrutiny, and you know we're developing that. And if there's any decision, if it's a delegated decision coming through to members, you know, I hope you feel you can ask the questions, you know, without going to call in. You can ask cabinet members, officers, what does this mean? Can you just clarify that? So just to make that point. Okay, are there any more questions? Was it Councillor Plevin who was indicating? I wasn't sure.
It was me, John.
All right, Debbie, Councillor Merriweather.
No.
No?
Yes, Councillor Merriweather, but I don't know if Claire wanted to speak, did she?
No, I didn't. Sorry about that. I had to put my hand up because my grandson needed me. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to put my apologies in and go and deal with something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if I can get back to you, I will.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Councillor Merriweather, you?
Yeah. Going back on to some of the points of needing the toilet and the cost, at the end of the day, the facility will be there to pay for, and it's better that you pay and have the facility than don't pay and the facility does get damaged, gets broken, and it's taken away from us. 20 pence is not too much to ask. Of course, like you've said, the security guard will be, he'll be lenient with people if he realises that they're genuine cases. I've no doubt about that. But it's a facility that I'm very happy to have back. And I'm happy because when I went to the toilet before, when it wasn't looked after, I walked in and no matter how desperate I saw the state of it and I thought, no way. So, I took my kids out and I said, I'm not letting you go in this toilet. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'd be happy to pay 20 pence, whether I was pregnant or ill. I do understand the situation that they have to go more often, but they might be able to have a word about getting a card of some sort to show and prove that they've got this condition that requires access to a toilet. That might be something that we could look at issuing. They get a card that states that they have to go more frequently, and if they're reluctant to spend the 20 pence but they're happy to show this card, that might be something we could look at.
Can I just build on that point, if you don't mind, John? Because I think that's the key thing, really. Because I don't think, well, certainly when I called this in, it was not because I objected to the concept of a charge. It was not because I didn't agree with the policy as written. It was some of the things around it that I wanted to specifically think about. And for those of you who you may or may not know, my wife is actually an obstetrics and gynecology trainee surgeon. So she deals with plenty of women who struggle with urinary incontinence and other things. And I think for me, it's just about maybe if we can almost formalise what we're just discussing. We're just saying around the security guard and leaving that to his discretion. But to Debbie's point, there might be an extra process that could be put in here for people that are in a situation, because going back to the question around figures, you know, there's a July 2011 paper in the Obstetrician and Gynecologist, which is one of the main papers that my wife is currently using as part of sitting her exams. And what it says in there, and I'll quote this to everyone, is that it's estimated that up to 50% of women experience urinary incontinence at some point in their lifetime, but the condition remains underreported to medical practitioners. But the key thing is these women often feel reluctant to visit new places. They worry that there will be no toilets nearby or there will be no bathroom facilities at all. Queuing at public toilets is a concern, and travel on transport without toilet facilities can seem like a nightmare. This concern is more common in women suffering from an overactive bladder, as the worry of urgency and urge incontinence without access to a toilet worsens the condition and a vicious cycle develops. And this is the key point. The end result of all of these concerns is that the woman is likely to stay at home and not travel. And I don't think any of us want to think that just by not having free access to a toilet, that would be an obstacle. So what I would just really like to see out of this is just a bit of consideration. We've clarified around cashlessness. We've clarified around how this sits within a broader toilet policy. But if there's some way of formalising a support mechanism or some form of card for those who are going to maybe need this regularly, just to show that we're not in any way discouraging people from visiting and using our town centres. I think that was really where this came from. It was not an objection to the concept of charging in the purpose of the paper as written.
Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Presley.
Yes, Chairman. I mean, James just gave us a spiel from a paper that I haven't seen, Chairman.
I've seen it.
He's got it in his. He's looking at it, not me. So unless I see that paper, I'm taking what James says, and which he might be right. But it's not about that today. It's about a call-in, about 20p for a toilet. If that sort of thing can be taken in after, I don't think we can make that policy tonight on that.
No,
that's my feeling. We're taking a decision on a call-in that somebody's brought in, which we look at in the right way, but we can't make a policy tonight. We're not the ruling body on that. We can ask for that from someone else.
Thank you, Councillor Presley. Yes, just for pointing that out, that is what we are here to decide. It is the call in on this delegated. So we're not making the policy. I know Councillor Bowker wants to come in, but I just wanted to ask if Councillor Evans or David Hill wanted to comment on that idea of a card or something, whether that's something that's ever been considered.
If you have a card, most people who have access, free access, are people with a known disability, and so that isn't an issue for them. If you want to go into all the different shades, starting with something as a urinary tract infection, which is a very temporary thing. If you want to then look at stress incontinence, having a toilet nearby, even in your own house, isn't near enough when you're suffering from stress incontinence. And UTIs are pretty responsive to antibiotic treatment anyway. And there are many, many different types of incontinence, and you can combine fecal with urinary incontinence. I have looked at that paper, James, and I've read it. And how you interpret it, as I say, there are many, many different shades. And I think at this moment in time, I would not suggest you should be, or we should be, looking at a card for somebody who wishes to use the toilet, because it's very difficult to say where on that ladder of a problem. Is it temporary? Is it serious? How often? How frequent? Is it just frequency, or is it true incontinence? So I think you're getting into some depth there that we probably can't address.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. And we've heard that the security card is flexible and helpful in that respect. Councillor Jack Bowker, if I can go to you now.
Thank you, Chair. No, just commenting on what's earlier been said about the card, actually. And from experience working in a pharmacy environment, we do tend to advise people, if they have difficulty going to the toilet and need the toilet more frequently, then you can actually apply for what is called a I've got it here on the phone. It is a just can't wait toilet card, actually, and that is from the bladder and bowel community. They're free to apply for, and I actually think trying to get the district council to bring forward some sort of initiative to give people cards is probably out of our jurisdiction, really, and we should be pointing people towards this initiative rather than making our own. This is this initiative is something that's renowned across the that sort of community and people with disabilities, and actually upon showing that card to anybody, be it a restaurant or anybody, by law they've got to let you go to their toilet, sort of thing, and use their facilities whether you're a paying customer or not. So that's the best route, I think, to point people into that's going to need the toilet, and actually look at it logistically. If there's somebody with toilet issues, say at the bottom end of the town centre near the precinct there, if they need the toilet, are they really going to make it to number 73? They'd look for an alternate toilet in a cafe or something. So we need to really push people to going for this card rather than trying to sort our own out, if you like. But as we've heard, and I've witnessed this along with Councillor Richardson, the attendant on the toilets, the security guard, is very lenient, and I'm sure people, I've witnessed it, genuine cases, he's quite prepared to let in. So I don't think we've got nothing to worry about in that respect. But that's it from me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. It's a good point. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I wasn't aware of that card, and that might be something the council could consider pointing people in that direction, or signposting it, publicising it. It's something you can get from a pharmacist, is it? Or
it's actually something you apply online. Apply online. Yeah. A just can't wait card, and that's from the bowel and bladder community, sort of thing. But it's basically a toilet exemption certificate. You can apply for it by searching it online. But that best channel, in my opinion, to point people towards. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions? We've had a very good discussion, and if there aren't any more comments or questions, I will move to the vote. Okay.
John, is the vote recorded?
Well, the whole thing's been recorded.
I mean, are we going round individually?
Yes, I'm just going to explain that. Yes. I'm just going to call members alphabetically. So the question is, do you support the confirmation of the delegated decision? Can you state clearly for, against, or abstain when I call your name? Okay, so Councillor Jack Bowker.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Robin Carrington-Wild.
For, Chair.
Councillor David Challoner.
For, Chair.
Councillor Ant Coulthate.
Abstaining.
Councillor Debbie Merriweather.
For, Chair.
Councillor James Naish.
Yeah, I'm happy to be for.
Councillor Claire Plevin.
She left, didn't she?
She's left, yeah. Okay, Councillor David Presley.
For, Chairman.
Councillor Madeline Richardson.
For, Chair.
And I'm for as well, Councillor John Shepherd. Councillor Helen Tamblin-Saville.
Sorry, Chair, abstain.
Okay, Councillor Mark Watson.
For, Chair, happy to support.
Thank you. So that the delegated decision is confirmed. Thank you for that. And thank you for everybody who's contributed to that. Thank you, Councillor Evans and
thank you.
David Hill, for attending. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now moving on to item 10A, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report, page 2019/20, page 37 to 52. I'm going to present the report, and the author of the report is Richard Gaspy. He will answer any questions as well. So I'll just find my copy of the agenda. I'm sure you've had a chance to read it. You will please know I'm not going to read through all of it. In the introduction, I just pointed out a number of things that it mentions the pre-scrutiny of cabinet decisions and the forward plan. We've done more of that in recent times, and I think that's a good thing. And also, Councillor Richardson pointed out, reminded us, you could submit questions before this committee meets in order to, clarify points and get responses from officers. The committee has worked well despite being impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic, and we've demonstrated innovative ways of working. This epidemic's had a wide-ranging impact on the way the council works. Scrutiny needs to be adaptive to that change. We must become more efficient and effective in what we do, and I think we've got a crucial role in the recovery period. Councillor Carrington Wild has just lost his connection temporarily. Will you just forgive me a second? I can hear something else in the household. I don't know whether you can hear it, but I'm just going to ask them to turn it. I think it might be the radio on, but I'll just pause that for a second. Thank you. Right, sorry about that. On page 42, there's discussion of where scrutiny fits in, and scrutiny's power of influence on page 43. I mentioned that about the pre-scrutiny, how important that is, and the key decisions, the forward plan. And call-in is mentioned as a last resort. In terms of scrutiny reviews, on page 44, it covers the cycling review, and on page 45, the outcomes. There were a number of interesting recommendations made. I'd just like to comment that in the light of events that have happened recently, there's been an uptick in cycling, and that's very noticeable, and it's great to see families out on their bikes and so on. Unfortunately, I feel that the traffic's getting back to almost normal levels now, and I just hope this sort of mini cycling boom can be sustained. I think Scrutiny's got a continued role here because the report has gone to Cabinet and we will monitor that response and discuss it again in the future. It's on our work programme. I think it's crucial we don't miss this opportunity, especially as the government has announced funding for more cycle routes and so on. We need to work with as we said in our recommendation, I think it was recommendation 4, we need to work with County Council to identify where our priorities would be for future schemes. So I'll look forward to that developing. Fly tipping's mentioned on that page as well. We've not forgotten about that. The COVID crisis temporarily stopped the planned review, but that will still be on our monitoring performance reports, so we'll be able to do scrutiny on that question when it comes up. And similarly with the flooding, we were very concerned that last committee we discussed this about, we didn't want to lose sight of that issue. Before we know it, it'll be the autumn and the rains, and it was last November we had serious flooding. So before this November, we will be looking at flooding issue. Probably we're expecting a cabinet paper on this. It will be coming to us for pre-scrutiny and then as a key decision. So there will be opportunity to question officers or cabinet members. So we will be looking at that. On page 46, it outlines what we did in terms of our annual review of the Basildon Newark Sherwood Community Safety Partnership, and mentions on page 49 the updates on the review of school exclusions that we did in the year before that. And that was a useful post-scrutiny monitoring exercise that highlighted that our original review had been a timely exercise, shining a light on an important issue. And that the Community Safety Partnership had forged closer links with the academies and engagement with the academies at local level had improved. They'd implemented a new behaviour policy, and that was contributing to lower exclusion rates. The bottom of that page mentions reports to review scrutiny, and the new statutory guidance that Richard outlined to us is mentioned there. Myself and Richard have attended events organised by the Centre for Public Scrutiny. There was a recent online workshop, and they are very good, very helpful in terms of guidance. And there's a lot of interesting discussion about the role of scrutiny in the recovery from this crisis. Okay, EMAS, East Midlands Ambulance Service, is mentioned on page 48. We've again not forgotten about that. We had a written update from them just before the crisis. They've obviously had other things to think about and been very busy, but we'll continue to work with EMAS as a critical friend, and communications with the EMAS will be picked up at an appropriate time. We have an annual review of the leisure contract with BPL, and that is coming up in the autumn, and we will receive that report, and we'll certainly be finding out more about trying to understand how the COVID crisis has impacted there on that provision. Complaints are mentioned on bottom of page 48. Again, this is a part of our function, looking at the council's annual summary of complaints. So again, we'll be scrutinising that. And performance monitoring is a quarterly function that goes to Cabinet and then comes to us for scrutiny. So it explains that again. Audit and Risk Scrutiny Committee is on bottom of page 49, and again, there's a useful outline there of the role of that committee and how that fits in with the scrutiny process. So looking forward, on page 50, we've got the work programme, which is also the next item on the agenda. So if I talk about it now, we don't need to talk about it later particularly, but I've already mentioned the flooding, the cycling, but we also discussed children and young people and how they were affected by the pandemic and the lockdown and the closure of schools and so on, and that was discussed at the last meeting. So that is on our work programme as well. So those are the three chosen themes: the flooding, the children and young people, and monitoring the cycling review as it goes through that cabinet process. And then, as I've mentioned already, the BPL and Community Safety Partnership. On page 51, it just explains that process, the way we've been doing scrutiny. We can have it as an agenda item, and that's on the forward plan or key decisions, but also it comes up in the performance monitoring reports, such as fly tipping. We can have a spotlight review where we have most of a particular committee taken up with an in-depth review, and the Community Safety Partnership review is an example of that, done once a year. And then we can still do the more in-depth scrutiny review, which will probably involve task and finish groups with more than 2 meetings. I think another good point is that this new way of working has opened up other possibilities where task and finish groups could use this way of meeting. There's also the possibility of hybrid meetings, where it's a mixture of meetings in person and meetings online. So, as we mentioned earlier, we've now got a whole range of flexibility in terms of remote working as a council, which we didn't have before. So the last bit is strengthening scrutiny in key areas, and financial scrutiny is mentioned there. Obviously, that's going to be a major challenge for the council going forward in the current situation. It's a challenge for the country as a whole. They mentioned there about the Centre for Public Scrutiny saying that to be effective, scrutiny should have parity of esteem with the executive. In conclusion, we've certainly been impacted by the pandemic, but the lessons learned can be used to our advantage. And an effective culture, careful preparation, careful planning by everybody, and early conversations with the executive on their decision making will help ensure that scrutiny is effective and sound decisions are made in the best service of Bassetlaw and its communities. So thank you very much for that. I don't know if there's any comments or questions from members.
John, just on the point around the importance of financial scrutiny,
yes.
I wonder whether, given the growing importance of this as a function for overview and scrutiny, I wonder whether we should be looking at some form of additional training to support us in really understanding how the council makes money, where its charges are coming from. I look at things like the housing revenue account, and unless you are an accountant and you've got that background, there's a lot of tables and a lot of numbers, and it isn't necessarily a natural thing for people to understand. So I think if we are looking to do more work around this, I think we probably should be looking to invest a little bit of time in trying to get everybody to the point where we can do that to the best of our ability.
I think that's a good point, and I think a lot of councils probably find the financial side challenging. There has been training offered in, certainly I can think of examples in recent times looking at the financial side of the council. I don't know if Steve wants to comment on that. Steve Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a good point that's been raised there to help members in terms of this new role. I think we're all sort of learning what it's going to involve. So there are two approaches that we can look at and combine those. One is the in-house training around and providing more support for members on that, because I am aware that obviously every council has slightly different ways of presenting its financial information. So there are some trainers who are offering their services already around this, but I think we just need to make sure we could look at that option as well, but we just need to make sure it does reflect is not too generic and doesn't really deal with the way that we report financial matters here. So I think we'll look at both of those. We are due to be reviewing members' training needs with the Member Development Working Party, so we can feed this into the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That would be good if we can feed that into the process as you suggested. Richard, I don't know whether you want to comment, because I believe the Centre for Public Scrutiny am I right that they've got something on the financial side, whether we can get something from them?
Yes, Chair. They've got a variety of different training courses, and I believe there's Zoom team meetings and things like that they have. So yeah, we can look at what they've currently got to offer. I know that I looked at a couple myself and they were fully subscribed, so we could always get in touch with them directly to say, what else they've got planned and whether they could support us. I know they've offered all councils support through the COVID pandemic, so it might be something that we can ask the question and see what they come back with, Chair.
Thank you. That would be good. Councillor Presley, David.
Yes, Chairman. I think training is essential, and we would have had it this year because of COVID. But I think we want to have financial officers to give us the training on our, like Steve says, councils do it different. So we want to have financial officers in our council to give us the training. I think so, anyway, Chairman.
I think you're right, David. Yeah, our finance officers, but we could perhaps learn from information given out at the Centre for Public Scrutiny, as Richard was saying, in terms of directing that training and focusing. But it may be something that could be offered to all members, not just overview and scrutiny, but perhaps with a focus on how we scrutinise finance. Thanks for that suggestion. Anyway, that's good.
Yes, John.
Maddie, Councillor Richardson, did you have a comment?
Sorry, I think the task and finish groups are absolutely invaluable. The way that they've been, brought together, and the officers have really worked hard. And Richard and Liz, and they've done a fantastic job getting all the information. When I did the waste and recycling group, there was everything there, and they gave me everything to look at. In fact, probably pestered the life out, actually, because I kept going. But, cycling, I'm not interested in as I do cycle, but something like that, I didn't think it would be valuable. But actually, when you look at the way COVID has changed everything, it's a good job, really, we're doing that because of the way the traffic's come back now, as you said. I met a family today I had to really go around because I felt they're all helmeted up, but you feel like I'm going to push them over the edge, into the thing, because there's just no cycle pass. There has been call for one, especially between my estate where I live and towards Sainsbury's, because that was brought forward in the Labour group county when we were in power, and they were actually got the money to change that from, because we're isolated on St Anne's, and change the whole road from a 70 mile an hour or whatever it is, where people want to walk on the curb to get to the supermarket. And that's a really bad area. We can't get out without cars. We can't go up there. That was passed, and then of course it got stopped when the other bunch got in. But it's going through as a consideration, really. They're bringing it forwards from county for that. Someone that's actually on the Transport and Highways or community team, and it's not going to get left, because I think this is what we have to fight for in scrutiny too, to bring these things forward and make somebody responsible for getting these actions. We've had a good success so far in all the ones that we've done, and the cycling now is really an important thing for people now that really enjoyed going out. And I think, while much the COVID bit has been really awful and we've lost lots of lives and whatever's happened, that has been a good thing for people, families actually getting out. And they're all still on the bikes, as you say, hoping that keeps going. But if they haven't got anywhere to go, it might peter down. But so far, a lot of families are out. So I think these task and finish groups are really needed. If we're fighting for things, we need as a group to know what we're doing, get the training we need in place for everything we are doing, and get fighting and scrutinise these things and get things put forward, because so far I think we've done a good job as a team together in the committee. So that's a good thing for us to keep going, and I'm sure we will in the next year.
Thank you, Maddie. Councillor Richardson. Yeah,
If
yeah,
I could make a comment.
endorse all that, certainly. Who's that?
It's Mark.
Mark, thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Yes, I'm sure I could benefit hugely from some financial training if that's available. Secondly, on the cycling, last time we discussed it, I brought up problems of cycling safety in the smaller villages where we have narrow roads and traffic and things. Just an update on that. We've had a huge increase in leisure cycling since COVID, with droves of people cycling through our villages. I did have to stop one night on my way home from work and resuscitate a cyclist at the side of the road who'd come off his bike and suffered a significant head injury, who was deeply unconscious, and who may well have died at the side of the road. Whether he was hit by a car or not, we don't know, because nobody witnessed what happened. But we did manage to get him breathing again, and he was starting to recover consciousness by the time that the ambulance arrived. But I think, as Maddie said, some of the roads are very difficult for people to cycle along safely, and that's something we do need to highlight.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, for sharing that. That's terrible. Hopefully a good outcome. But I just wanted to say, can I just comment before you come in? It's just saying that it is so important we keep the focus on this, as you say, because it's been such an increase in cycling, but we just need those safe routes, don't we, to keep people away from the traffic. Sorry, who was that? Who wants to come in? I could.
Chair, it was me, Councillor Challoner.
David, Councillor Challoner.
Obviously, to give an update from the audit risk, every councillor, even now we're on virtual meetings, when audit risk meetings are on, it's an open public meeting like this is tonight, and every councillor is always invited along if they've got the time to come along. And it's the same when we've got one this Thursday, which is a real important one. And if councillors are available, they can obviously tune in through the virtual side of things, because it's going to cover a right multitude of things. And obviously, when there is training, it does go out to all councillors when the night that we have treasury management training. I know Robin, when he was chair of audit risk, it does seem repetitive, the treasury management thing, but it's something that is a standard that this council has to do each year to say that we are doing it. And sometimes even members of the committee don't bother turning up, but they don't realise, like has been pointed out, how important financial training is to the council, especially this next year, because like I say, if people tune in to the audit risk meeting on Thursday night, it's going to be a right eye-opener. That's all I'm going to say on it, because there's a lot of things through COVID-19. Financially, this council is not working on a week-to-week basis, on a day-to-day basis, how the finances of this council are being done, because it's an ever-changing thing that's changing day to day. There's different messages coming out from central government, which is going to have a massive effect on this council. One of the things that we were going to undertake this year, or we're going to put forward to a special meeting after the AGM, was the review of the council's constitution. That was going really well, obviously, until COVID-19, and that's put a stopper on everything. So that's one of the things that it has affected, because we wanted to get in place a more modern constitution, because it hadn't been looked at for about 14 years. So these are the things that this pandemic has affected. But the actual financial running of the council, I can vouch that Daville and the team are doing it as things change day to day. So like I say, the meeting on Thursday night, the audit risk meeting, will be quite an eye-opener. That's all I'm going to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. Councillor Bowker, Jack.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to come in about the point Councillor Watson raised about finance and basically get people getting, especially new members, getting a better understanding of local government finance. Back in November, actually, I went on a local government association weekend, not trip as such, educational visit to Coventry, and we got talks from various different people. One was a gentleman talking about finance, especially what really matters with local government and how to become basically trying to make it present day finances, and how it's difficult for local government authorities now to try and maintain to balance the books, if you like. So it did give us everybody that took part in the course actually got a USB, basically with a PowerPoint, and giving people understanding of how things worked. So if Councillor Watson and any other members for that matter find it interesting or anything, or would like a better understanding, or me to share some of the things I know about it, I'm more than happy to pass on the USB stick to have a look at. I found it very interesting. I gave it to Councillor Greaves, Simon Greaves, the leader of the council, to have a look through, and he still got it. Actually, found it really interesting. So I'm more than happy to pass it on to anybody that wants to look at it, if that's helpful to you. Just make you aware, Chair, as well. I've got about 2% battery. So if I do go, that'll be why, because I've not got a power socket near me or anything. So sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting us know. There is one more item after this one. But
you're not very good at finance, then, Jack.
Thanks for that suggestion, Jack, because yeah, we might be able to share that information maybe. But clearly, members are saying that some finance training would be helpful.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions or comments on the report?
Chairman.
Yeah.
Just on training,
David.
Just on training, it has to go through to Steve Brown and the team that booked the training on. It's no good having some training just for one and not the other. You know, it don't work like that, Chairman. You pass something on, and other people say, "Well, I know that," and then you don't do the training together. You've got to do it together, Chairman.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we're feeding into the council's process of member training, so that members of scrutiny would like financial training, but it may be something that could be offered to all members. Okay, are there any more comments or questions on that report, on the annual scrutiny report? If not, I'm going to move to the recommendation. I'll just read that out. So the recommendation at 6.1 is that members note the overview and scrutiny annual report and refer it to full council in accordance with the council's constitution. Is anyone against that course of action or wishes to abstain? No, thank you. That is carried. And next we have item 10B, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Programme 2020/21, page 53 to 60. Now you'll be pleased, Jack, that we've covered some of this already in the discussion, but I'll hand over to Richard Gatsby, who's going to outline the report and answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just in addition to what's written in the report, members will note that there's an extraordinary overview and scrutiny committee that will follow the cabinet on the 2nd of November. So that will look at the approval for public consultation on the draft Bassett Law plan, and approval for public consultation on the draft Bassett Law Garden Village statement. So that will be added into our work programme. In terms of the report itself, and further to discussions from last meeting, what we're really trying to do here is sort of refocus on the priorities and scrutiny's role in supporting these. Obviously, scrutiny's got a number of tools in its bag. It can look at items as a single agenda item in committee, can do a spotlight review, or it can do a full-scale scrutiny review, and I think those were discussed in the previous report. We've got capacities to support one scrutiny review through a task and finish group this municipal year. It's just worth noting with task and finish groups, obviously there's they involve a number of meetings, and also there's the task and finish group has to report back to the overview and scrutiny committee, and then it gets referred to cabinet. So they're not really suitable for things that are needing a quick sort of turnaround. So that's just one thing to note. They are very useful, but not for sort of quick turnaround things. So in terms of the items that scrutiny have chosen, obviously we've discussed about the flooding, children and young people we touched upon, and the cycling process, which the report went to cabinet, and cabinet will submit a formal response back to scrutiny in due course. Just looking in terms of the flooding, the authorities previously scrutinised this, and obviously one way the committee can sort of revisit this is to look at some of those actions from the previous review. Obviously it's a county and environment agency responsibility, and the section 19 reports from the county council will be key to the review, but we do know that it's going to be subject to a report, hopefully to cabinet in the autumn, so you've got a chance to do some pre-scrutiny and post-scrutiny work on that, and that is covered in the work programme. Just moving to the children and young people topic, that is a very large subject area for the committee to look at. So what the committee really needs to do is narrow down that scope on the areas that it wishes to cover. And just to note that as a district council, we've got a statutory role in terms of child poverty and safeguarding. The committee needs to also decide the format of the review. So it could be a task and finish group, but it also could be looked at the annual review of the community safety partnership. And we'll bring a scoping document back to committee that will be discussed and approved before we commence the review. So we've discussed about the COVID-19 recovery. That was a forward plan item on today's agenda. And we've also discussed about financial scrutiny, and we'll be bringing a report to this committee in due course, and we take on board those comments about member training. So the work programme shown at Appendix A in the report. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Questions for Richard? Richard, I was just thinking about the children and young people topic, and the safeguarding was one of our responsibilities. Would that therefore come under the annual community safety partnership review, just as we did with school exclusions, and we could maybe look at the COVID impact there?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Gerald Connor's other role is safeguarding as well as community safety, so it does actually fit in quite well if you wanted to discuss it in that forum.
Are you going to bring a sort of scoping paper back to the committee so we could discuss it properly? Is that the plan?
Yeah, if that's the intention of members, that we would discuss it at the community safety partnership, we would bring a scoping document back to committee, looking at those sort of safeguarding areas. But it's really to, if we can get some direction from members about the particular aspects of safeguarding, and what we can look at and what we can't really look at. And I just remind members that scrutiny needs to consider its areas of influence, really, because obviously a lot of these things are sort of county issues, so it's really talking about specific areas that we can influence in this arena.
Thank you, Richard. Like for example, the partners we work with on the community safety partnership, police and health and education. Yeah, in terms of liaison, but we don't provide those things. What do members think? Do they feel that would be a useful way forward to look at young people under the community safety
Chair?
umbrella? Yeah.
Yes. I think it's more appropriate to do that because we don't know the areas which has been difficult from COVID, really. We know school and teaching at home and teachers having to do things. But I think we might just be out of where we could influence anything unless we had the proper expertise from Gerald's safeguarding team and get their thoughts on it. If Richard does the scope, then we will have more idea on which areas we can influence and which we can't, because we're not experts in this, are we? So I think it's important. Well, my opinion is we work with the safeguarding team and to see what even if they did a report or something that we had, but the scope is a definite idea. I think it's safer that way, Chair.
Yeah. So are members happy then for Richard to sort of explore that and scope the options, really, the possibilities around looking at that under the community safety partnership? As you say, we've got to be careful not to get into areas that we can't directly influence, areas where we do have some responsibility. And the other thing is that it's still an emerging picture, isn't it? The community safety partnership review will be sort of early next year. That might be good timing in terms of by then we might have a bit of a clearer picture what we're looking at. Is that okay?
I think, Chair, as it's going on and it's not quite out of COVID, and we haven't got any figures on what's happening with children or young people.
No.
We're not out of it yet, and we're not out of the woods, and we might have to go back into it. Hopefully, keep fingers crossed we don't.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to have to be something we do later on, rather than at the immediate, because we've just got nowhere to find anything at the moment.
No, I think that's absolutely right. So I don't know what, Richard, what would be the timescales? We'll be sort of scoping it maybe September, October time to do in the new year.
Yeah, I think I've got it off the top of my head. I think I've got it towards the end of the year in terms of approving a scope. Well, I think what we've done in previous years, we've brought the scope in quite early, and we've had a good discussion about it, tweaked it, maybe brought it back if we need to. So yeah, we can look to do that in September if that suits the members.
Thank you. Are members happy with that? We'll let Richard bring that back in September for us to do the scoping of that review.
Yes, let's do it.
I am, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments or questions for Richard? If not, I'll move to the recommendations. At 6.1 and 6.2, the committee agree the approach to the work programme as set out in the report, and that members are advised to contact the policy and communications unit should they have any queries regarding future meetings. So is anyone against the course of action or wish to abstain? No, that recommendation is carried therefore. We move on to section B, items for discussion in private. There are no confidential key decisions to consider. Item 11, there are no waves of call-in. Item 12, there are no possible call-ins, a decision made by Cabinet. Item 13, any other business which the Chair considers to be urgent. I don't have anything else to add. And so that concludes the meeting. And thank you, everyone, for attending and for your contributions. We've had some good discussions tonight. Thank you. And if I